The impact came without warning. One moment, Dr. Elias Mercer was cataloging bioluminescent fauna samples in the research submersible's tiny lab. The next, he was thrown against the bulkhead as emergency alarms shrieked through the cabin. What happened? He called out, struggling to regain his footing on the tilting floor. Neria. The Thalassian diplomatic observer was already at the navigation console, her purple skin reflecting the flashing red emergency lights. Ocean current anomaly. We've been pulled into an underwater cave system. Her fingers moved across the control panel with practiced precision. Propulsion systems damaged. Communications offline. Elias felt the familiar clench of panic in his chest, but pushed it aside. 3 years studying the oceanic ecosystems of distant planets had taught him that survival depended on staying calm. Status report on life support? Functioning, but we've lost 30% of our oxygen reserves in the crash, Neria replied, her voice measured despite the gravity of their situation. The hull is intact, but we're wedged between crystal formations. We cannot move. Elias moved to the viewport and gasped. They were surrounded by massive translucent crystals that seemed to pulse with internal light, bathing their small vessel in an eerie blue glow. The beauty was undeniable, even in their predicament. The Shimmer Caves, Neria said, joining him at the viewport. They're sacred to my people. No one has mapped them completely there. Too unstable, Great Elias muttered. Trapped in unmapped, unstable sacred caves. The Research Foundation will love this. The crystals interfere with standard communication signals, Neria continued, ignoring his sarcasm. We need to activate the emergency beacon manually. They worked together in silence for the next hour, Elias following Neria's instructions as they rerouted power to the emergency systems. He'd been initially wary when the Thalassian Science Council had insisted on sending one of their own as an observer on this expedition, but Neria had proven herself knowledgeable and capable. There, she said finally. Beacon activated. Now we wait. How long until someone responds? Elias asked. Under normal circumstances, 8 hours. In the Shimmer Caves, she hesitated. It's difficult to say, Elias sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. So we're stuck here together. Neria tilted her head, her luminous eyes studying him. Does that concern you, Dr. Mercer? No, He stopped, noticing something strange. The crystals around them seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Is that normal? Neria followed his gaze, her expression changing to one of concern. No, the crystals are responsive to Thalassian energy patterns, but they should not react to human biology. She moved closer to the viewport, placing her hand against it. The crystals pulsed more intensely. Something's happening, she whispered. I can feel it. Elias felt it, too, a strange pressure in his mind, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. What is it? The crystals amplify psychic energy. They're creating a connection between us. Neria turned to him, her eyes wide. You should not be able to feel it at all. Humans lack the necessary neural pathways. Well, I'm definitely feeling something, Elias said, wincing as the pressure increased. This is unprecedented, Neria murmured. We need to be careful. Strong emotions could intensify the effect. Fantastic, Elias replied dryly. Trapped in a broken submersible with unstable psychic crystals and instructions to stay emotionally flat. What could go wrong? As if in answer, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by the pulsing blue glow of the crystals and the faint bioluminescence of Neria's skin. Everything, she whispered in the new darkness. Everything could go wrong. The emergency lights flickered on after 30 seconds of darkness, casting the submersible's interior in a dim red glow that made Neria's purple skin appear almost maroon. Elias watched as she methodically assessed their situation, moving from console to console with practiced efficiency. Life support is stable for now, she reported, but we're using oxygen faster than anticipated. The crash must have damaged more systems than we thought, Elias suggested. Checking the environment monitors, Neria shook her head. No, it's the psychic resonance. The crystals are drawing energy from our bodies to establish the connection. It accelerates metabolic processes. Elias frowned. So we're burning through oxygen faster because the crystals are... What? Trying to get us to communicate telepathically? In simplistic terms, yes. Neria sat across from him, her expression serious. The Shimmer Caves are considered sacred because they enhance the natural empathic abilities of my people. They allow us to share memories, emotions, even sensations. No. But I'm human, Elias reminded her. I don't have those abilities. And yet, you felt the resonance beginning? Her eyes studied him with scientific curiosity. Fascinating. Leah shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. We need to conserve oxygen. Maybe we should take turns sleeping. That would be wise, Neria agreed. I require less oxygen than you. I will remain awake first. Despite his protests, Elias found himself drifting off in the small sleeping compartment. His dreams were vivid and strange, swimming through crystal-clear waters, feeling the currents against his skin as naturally as breathing. Experiencing the ocean not as an alien environment, but as home. He woke with a start to find Neria watching him. Her expression troubled. You were projecting, she said quietly. I could see your dreams. That's impossible, he insisted, sitting up too quickly and banging his head on the low ceiling. The resonance is strengthening. She handed him a water pouch. And there's something else. Look. She guided him to the viewport. The crystals now pulsed with a purple-blue light that matched the rhythm of both their heartbeats, perfectly synchronized. We're becoming attuned to each other, Neria explained. Soon we will share more than just surface thoughts. Elias asked, unnerved by the implications. We cannot. Not while we remain in the caves. Her hand touched his arm, and he felt a jolt of something concern, fear, and underneath it all, a strange fascination. The process has begun. Over the next few hours, they took inventory of their supplies and attempted to repair the communications array. Working side by side, Elias became acutely aware of Neria's presence, the graceful precision of her movements, the subtle luminescence that seemed to brighten when she concentrated. You're staring, she said, without looking up from the circuit board she was examining. Sorry, he mumbled, embarrassed at being caught. It's just I can feel what you're feeling. It's distracting. Neria set down her tools. Then we must learn to control it. Among my people, children are taught from infancy to manage their empathic projections. I didn't exactly have that training, Elias pointed out. Then I will teach you. She moved closer. Sitting cross-legged before him, close your eyes. Imagine your mind as the surface of Thalassa's oceans. Your thoughts are waves. They rise and fall naturally. Elias followed her instructions, surprised to find that he could visualize exactly what she described. As he focused on the mental image, he felt the pressure in his mind ease. Good Neria's voice came both aloud and somehow inside his thoughts. Now imagine a boundary, not a wall, but a horizon line. Your emotions remain within that boundary. They practiced for what seemed like hours, their breathing synchronizing, their heartbeats falling into perfect rhythm. When Elias finally opened his eyes, the crystals around them had shifted from chaotic pulses to a steady, gentle glow. It's working, he whispered in amazement. Neria smiled. An expression he'd not seen from her before. Yes, but this is only the beginning. The resonance will continue to grow stronger the longer we remain here. As if to punctuate her warning, the submersible groaned, metal scraping against crystal as the current shifted their position. What happens? Elias asked hesitantly, if the resonance becomes too strong. Neria's eyes met his, and he felt her concern wash over him despite her mental boundaries. Then we cease to be two separate minds. We become something else entirely. By the third day, they had established a routine. Mornings were spent on repairs and monitoring life support. Afternoons were dedicated to resonance training, which Neria insisted was necessary for their survival. Evenings were for conserving energy, sharing ration packs, and talking quietly as the crystal light ebbed and flowed around them. Tell me about Earth, Neria requested as they sat together in the observation dome. Watching luminescent fish dart between the crystals outside, I've studied the biological reports, but I've never heard a first-hand account. Elias smiled, thinking of the Pacific coastline where he'd grown up. It's beautiful in its own way. Not like Thalas, our oceans are darker, wilder, But when the sun sets over the water, as he described it, he felt the memory flowing from his mind to Hurst, the orange-gold light spilling across churning waves, the salt spray on his face, the profound silence as the final sliver of sun disappeared. Neria gasped softly. "I can see it perfectly," she whispered. "Feel it." The intimacy of the shared memory startled him. It was one thing to know intellectually that they were forming a psychic bond. It was another entirely to experience it so vividly. "Sorry," he said, pulling back mentally. "I didn't mean to project so strongly. Don't apologize." Her fingers brushed against his, sending a ripple of warmth through the connection between them. It was beautiful. Something changed between them after that exchange. The careful distance they had maintained, both physically and mentally, began to dissolve. Their conversations flowed more easily. Punctuated by shared impressions and emotions that required no words, Elias found himself increasingly drawn to her, fascinated by her perspective on the universe, her scientific brilliance, the way her skin seemed to glow more intensely when she laughed at his awkward jokes. On the fourth day, disaster struck. A tremor shook the cave system, sending crystal shards raining down on the submersible's hull. One punctured the secondary oxygen tank, reducing their remaining air supply by half. 17 hours, Neria calculated grimly after they had sealed the breach. "That's all we have left." Elias checked the emergency beacon. "Still transmitting, but there's no way to know if anyone can detect it through the crystal interference." They sat in silence, the reality of their situation settling over them like a weight. Through their strengthening bond, Elias could feel Neria's fear not for herself, but for him. Humans required more oxygen. He would suffer first. "There might be a way," she said finally. "But it's dangerous. I'm listening. The resonance between us, if we deepen it intentionally. I could share my respiratory efficiency with you. My people can extract oxygen from water through our skin. If our connection becomes strong enough, you might be able to access that ability." Leah stared at her. "Is that even possible?" "Theoretically. It has never been attempted between different species." She hesitated. "But it would require dropping all mental boundaries. Complete openness. Everything I am would flow into you, and everything you are would flow into me." The implications hung between them, unspoken but understood. Such intimacy went beyond the physical. It was a merging of minds, memories, perhaps even souls. "And afterward," he asked quietly, "could we separate again?" Neria's luminous eyes met his. "I don't know." That night, unable to sleep, Elias found Neria in the observation dome, her form silhouetted against the blue-purple glow of the crystals. Without speaking, he sat beside her, letting his shoulder touch hers. "I'm afraid," she admitted, the words barely audible. "Of dying? Of losing myself in you." She turned to face him. "My people value our mental uniqueness above all else. To merge with another mind is our most sacred act reserved for life bonds." Elias felt a wave of understanding wash over him. What she was offering wasn't just a survival technique, was the equivalent of a marriage, a commitment that transcended physical intimacy. "What if we don't make it?" he asked. "What if we run out of air before rescue comes?" "Then we die as ourselves," she whispered, "separate, alone." Through their connection, he felt the depth of her conflict, the scientist in her calculating survival odds against the cultural taboos she had been raised with. But beneath that, something else was growing, an emotion he recognized, because it mirrored his own. Slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The resonance between them surged, bringing with it a flood of sensation, her pulse quickening, her breath catching. The complex mix of fear and hope and longing that filled her mind. "We're not alone," he said softly. "Not anymore." Dawn of the fifth day brought a terrible clarity. Their oxygen would last only until mid-afternoon. The rescue beacon continued its silent plea into the crystal-choked waters, but no response had come. Time, once a comfortable abstraction, had become their enemy. Elias found Neria at the submersible's small science station, analyzing crystal samples with intense focus. Through their strengthening bond, He felt her determination tinged with resignation, a scientist to the end, gathering knowledge that might never reach her people. "Have you made your decision?" she asked without looking up from her work. "Wanting to understand exactly what you're proposing first." He sat beside her, their knees almost touching in the confined space. "This mental merging, explain it to me scientifically." Neria set down her instruments and turned to face him. "The crystals serve as conductors for neural energy. They've already created pathways between our minds. That's why we can sense each other's emotions. What I'm suggesting goes deeper. How much deeper? Total integration." Her voice was calm, clinical, but he could feel her underlying apprehension. "Our neural patterns would harmonize completely. Memories, knowledge, instincts all shared. My respiratory adaptations would become accessible to you because your brain would recognize them as your own." Elias tried to process the implications. Would we still be ourselves? Yes and no. Neria's fingers traced patterns on the console between them. "We would retain our core identities, but they would be expanded. Imagine two oceans meeting, the waters mingle, but the currents remain distinct. But you said earlier you weren't sure if we could separate afterward, because it's never been done between species." Her eyes met his, vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen before. "Our neurophysiology is different. The pathways being created are unprecedented." Silence stretched between them, filled with the soft hum of failing life support systems and the constant gentle pulse of the crystals. Through their connection, complex emotions flowed back and forth: fear, hope, and something deeper that neither of them had acknowledged aloud. "There's something you're not telling me," Elias said finally. Neria looked away. "Among my people, this merging is ... intimate, sacred. It is how we choose life partners, how we create lasting bonds. It is not done lightly. You're saying it's like marriage? More profound than your concept of marriage. It is the sharing of everything past, present, the essence of self." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What makes this even more unprecedented is that I already feel ... drawn to you. That would affect the merging." The admission hung in the air between them. Elias felt his heart race, and through their bond, he knew she could sense his reaction, the surprise, the answering surge of emotion he'd been trying to suppress. "I've felt it too," he admitted quietly. "From the beginning, even before the crash. I thought it was just intellectual curiosity." A small smile touched her lips. "A scientist's explanation. Is that why the crystals responded to me? Because of how I felt about you? Perhaps." She reached out, her fingers hovering just above his hand. "The crystals amplify emotional energy. If there was already a connection between us..." Elias closed the distance, taking her hand. The resonance between them intensified immediately, crystal light pulsing more brightly around the submersible. "If we do this," he said, "if we merge completely, what happens if rescue comes? Would we have to stay together forever?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But we will face that question only if we survive." As if to emphasize their dwindling options, the life support system chimed a warning oxygen levels at 15%. Elias took a deep breath of the thinning air. "How do we begin?" Neria's expression softened with relief and something else of vulnerability that made her seem suddenly younger. "We go to the observation dome. The crystal concentration is strongest there. We sit facing each other and open our minds completely. That's it? No equipment or preparations? This isn't technology, Elias. It's something much older." She stood, still holding his hand. "Are you certain?" "Once begun, the process cannot be reversed." Elias rose to meet her, surprising himself with his clarity of purpose. "I'm certain." In the observation dome, the crystal light bathed them in shifting patterns of blue and purple. They sat cross-legged, knees touching, hands clasped between them. Neria's skin glowed more intensely than he had ever seen, pulsing in harmony with the crystals around them. "Close your eyes," she instructed softly. "Remember our practice sessions. But now, instead of creating boundaries, dismantle them. Imagine the horizon line between us fading away. our waters meeting, flowing together. Elias followed her guidance, focusing on the mental image they had shared so often during their training. He felt the familiar pressure building in his mind, stronger now, insistent. "Don't resist it," Neria whispered, her voice seeming to come from both outside and inside his head simultaneously. "Let it flow." He relaxed, allowing the mental barriers to dissolve. The pressure transformed into something else, a rushing sensation, like standing in the surf as waves broke around him. Neria's presence grew stronger in his consciousness. It's no longer just emotional impressions, but clear, distinct thoughts. "I'm here," her mind touched his. "I'm with you." Then the true merging began. It began with memories vivid, overwhelming. Elias experienced Neria's childhood on Thalassa, swimming through vast underwater gardens tended by her scientist parents. The first time she felt another's emotions as her own. The years of rigorous training to control her empathic abilities. He lived her triumphs and failures, felt her determination to prove that humans and Thalassians could collaborate as equals. In turn, he felt her experiencing his life, lonely years in coastal research stations, the wonder of his first deep-sea expedition, the painful end of his engagement to a colleague who couldn't understand his devotion to his work, the thrill of being selected for the Thalassa mission. Deeper still came knowledge, her understanding of aquatic ecosystems merging with his expertise in Earth's oceanography, creating new insights neither could have reached alone. Scientific concepts flowed between them, language barriers dissolving as meaning transcended words. Then came the physical awareness. Elias felt his lungs burning from oxygen deprivation, even as a new sensation emerged, his skin tingling, somehow drawing sustenance from the moisture in the air. Neria's respiratory adaptations were becoming accessible to him, just as she had theorized. "It's working," he thought, the words forming in both their minds simultaneously. But the merging continued beyond what either had anticipated. Their consciousness expanded, encompassing not just each other, but the crystal cave itself. They sensed the complex energy flows, the delicate balance of the ecosystem, the subtle movements of currents carrying messages between crystal formations. And there, at the edge of their newly expanded awareness, something responded, a presence, vast and ancient. "The caves are alive," Neria's thoughts flowed into his. The legends were true. The crystal entity 4, that's what they both now understood it to be, had been observing them, curious about their connection. It recognized Neria as Thalassian, but found Elias fascinating, a species never encountered before, yet capable of the resonance bond. Without words, they conveyed their situation to the entity. The crash, their dwindling oxygen, the failed rescue attempts. The response came not as language, but as understanding. The crystal formations extended far beyond their cave, creating a network throughout the Thalassa's oceans. The entity could guide them to safety, but only if they maintained the merged consciousness that allowed communication. A choice presented itself: attempt the journey together as this new, combined being, or remain in the submersible, waiting for a rescue that might come too late. In the space between thoughts, they reached a decision, not Elias alone, or Neria alone, but both together. Eyes still closed, they rose in perfect synchronization. Through their shared perception, they could navigate the submersible without sight. Activating the manual override for the airlock. Water rushed in as the outer door opened, but they felt no panic. Neria's adaptations now functioned for both of them, extracting oxygen from the sea water that enveloped their bodies. They swam out into the crystal cave, following the pulses of light that only their merged consciousness could interpret as directions. The journey through the underwater labyrinth would have been impossible for either alone. The crystal entity guided them through narrow passages where currents shifted unpredictably, past caverns where predators lurked, always moving upward and outward toward the open ocean. As they swam, a new concern emerged in their shared mind. What would happen when they reached safety? Would the connection between them fade once they left the crystal caves? Or had they been permanently transformed? Does it matter? The thought formed between them, belonging to neither and both. Whatever happens, we face it together. After what seemed like hours, they felt the crystal guidance changing, urging them upward more steeply. The water around them grew warmer, lighter, and then they broke the surface, emerging into dazzling sunlight. The open ocean stretched around them, and in the distance, the silhouette of a Thalassian research vessel moved across the horizon. As Elias gasped his first breath of open air, he felt the merged consciousness beginning to shift. The crystal influence was fading, the boundaries of self reasserting. Panic flashed through him. Was he losing her? "I'm still here," Neria's thoughts came, fainter but distinct. "The deepest connection remains." They signaled the vessel, which changed course immediately upon spotting them. As they treaded water waiting for rescue, their hands found each other beneath the surface. "What happens now?" Elias asked aloud, his voice rough from disuse. Neria's luminous eyes met his. "Something unprecedented," she answered, a smile playing at her lips. "Just like everything else about us." The research vessel drew closer. Its crew visibly shocked to find survivors in the open ocean days after the submersible had been declared lost. Questions would follow, explanations would be needed for how they had escaped, how they had survived underwater, what they had discovered. But those concerns belonged to the future. For now, there was only the warm sun above, the gentle swell of waves around them, the profound understanding that flowed between them, different from the complete merging they had experienced, but deeper than any normal connection could be. As the rescue boat approached, Elias felt one final message from the crystal entity far below, at words, but a sensation of approval, of witnessing something rare and precious in their bond. "They think we're a miracle," he said, sensing the thoughts of the approaching rescue team. Neria squeezed his hand, her purple skin shimmering in the sunlight. "Perhaps we are." The bond between them hummed with shared understanding. They had entered the crystal caves as two separate beings and emerged as something more. Whatever challenges awaited them in the world above, they would face them together, their separate currents forever intertwined, flowing as one toward an uncharted future.